So we will open the Finance Commission meeting of May 27th. Tonight is a discussion among ourselves as we try to work through our recommendation and advice to the town council. We won't be meeting with any department heads tonight. So I just throw it open for some general discussion based on the flow of information we got last night from our meeting with the CFO and the town manager. Just what do you guys in general think about the revisions they suggested and the methods of making up for some of the revenue and so on? Anybody have any thoughts?
I'll go first if nobody else wants to go first. I don't care.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as their presentation last night, I think, you know, it doesn't much matter. I think it was long overdue. You know, I hate being put in a position where we have like 24 hours to react to something. And we asked for this information a month ago. But having said that, and got my frustrations out for that, I think we all agree that there needed to be some sort of adjustments to take into account what might be happening or is happening. I think they were too drastic in terms of, I think the room tax, as far as the local receipts, I think the room tax was a number that I could live with. I do think that there's going to be definite impacts, substantial impacts. I think there are going to be, you know, why do people use a hotel room in Winthrop rather than Boston? It's probably because of price and just availability. And I think there might be different options for people. So I do think that will have an impact just in general, if and when they ever start running again. In terms of the meals tax, I think it will have an impact. I don't think it will be as substantial. And the other thing I'm remembering in the back of my mind is when she says 25%, it's really 35 or 40%, because she told us a month ago that they were okay with the numbers because they had a 10 or 15% buffer in them. So I think I think to use the rationalization that, you know, this is 2008, 2009, I think it's a totally different scenario. I think there are people that are really hurting, and especially, you know, restaurant owners and nail salon owners and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of people, you know, there's a stat out there, and I don't know the exact age group, but 67% of the people are actually taking home more money now than they were 3 months ago. Now, the reasons for that are obviously a lot of unemployment, and that will have an impact on taxes next year for people. But I think people are chomping at the bit to get out and spend money. Not tons of it, but I think they will be going back to restaurants. I think it's obviously going to have an impact probably from July 1st to September 1st anyway, in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think 25% for the year is real. I think it's too conservative. And I think the excise tax, again, that number is 10%. I think it's really closer to 20% on what really comes in. And I do think there are going to be people buying cars. And I don't think, you know, I guess by the definition of the word, we're in a recession because of what the market did. But I don't think it's a recession like it was in the past. My own opinions. So I think they're being a little too aggressive on the loss of revenues there. And on the state aid, I think, you know, I could say one thing, they could say another. I think it's a roll of the dice. I don't think we really know what it's going to be. I do feel strongly that the state is going to do whatever it can to keep the losses at minimal. And I do think that the federal government, even though the color of our state might be pretty blue, I think they will come through with some sort of money. You know, again, it is an election year, and I think that the state is in relatively good shape financially with a huge rainy day fund. You know, so I think I got the impression that Anna was kind of giving us, like, telling us basically that we didn't have a choice in changing the revenue forecast because of getting our tax rate certified, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think we do. I don't think we have the right to say, you know what, I think we're going to raise our forecast because we think we're going to have more money coming in. I think that's unrealistic, but I think if we went from 10 to 5% or 20 to 25 to 15, I don't think that's unrealistic. And as far as what the state's giving us for aid, the unrestricted aid in the Chapter 70, I don't know. I still think it's a little high, but I don't think it's unrealistic. I think I could argue that her number's good, and I could probably argue that we could do 250,000 less than that and have more money coming in. So as far as what they presented, that as far as just a quick recap of some of the cuts, I think to even say that the planner is on the board for January, I think is just outrageous given the potential loss of employment that some people might have in the town. To bring anybody on new right now, I think is ridiculous. And I think a planner, the purpose of a planner is to get us grants so we could build more stuff. And if we don't have the money to take care of what we have now, I don't see all the stuff we're going to be building. If it was like the old days where the grant plan, when the grant writer was getting a percentage to go towards their salaries and stuff, I think that's a little different. But you're not, you know, I could easily make the argument that right now in the shape we're in, oh, what's the thing I wanted? Give me a second here. Not the benefit, the code enforcement officer would be, that's real money that does come into the town, and we're going to be having so many issues with code enforcement and having the ability to do it. It's really hard though for me to argue for hiring more people right now, but I could see the money going to that more than I could see it to come into a plan in January. And I know Anna made a passion plea and made a very nice email to Bob that he passed out saying why she really needs the accounts payable clerk. And in a perfect world, I think she does. I think it would be a great thing, but they've been without it for 6 months. They just hired a $95,000 a year assistant CFO, which was a job that was also vacant for the past 6 months. I think it was a bad time for that hire. You know, so I think there are a few things on their list that I would like to change in some way, shape, or form, but and I could go on, but I'd rather let other people talk.
If I can?
Yes.
I disagree somewhat with what Jim has said. I think both Anna and Austin have worked extremely hard on this, and this is an unprecedented time, and everything is so uncertain. And I believe that they were doing the best job they could with the information that they have. I also, in regards to finance, in my personal finance, I always like to err on the side of caution. And I always like to play it safe and not hedge my bets. And if they want to make more cuts than necessary, and then we end up in the black on the other side of this, fantastic. But if we underestimate how much there might be, then we end up in the red, and it's an emergency situation. I also think that there's a little bit of a contradiction there when you're very optimistic about things opening up and restaurants and hotels getting back to where they were. I'm much more of a pessimist, and I think that things are going to go on for longer than we think they are, or that you think they are. And I believe that if we do rush back into hotels and restaurants, that we're just going to have another outbreak. That's what the scientists are saying. That's what the epidemiologists are saying, that there's just going to be kind of an up and down if we don't play it safe. And we're just kind of, opening things up, having to close them again, opening things up, having to close them again. I'd rather play it safe. That's my opinion. And in regards to the planner, I do think that the planner brings in money. And in a lot of ways, people say that they're self-funding. I do think that Anna needs help. I think that she's, obviously, the girl looks like she hasn't slept in weeks. She's working very hard, and I think that's very obvious to most of us, that she's working very hard. If she's asking for help, I think that she needs help. I would also ask the commission to consider maybe giving Roz from the Veterans Department a little bit more money. I don't think she's asking for much. She's obviously working above and beyond what she's been tasked with, and she does a lot more than most other people would with the amount of money she's being paid. And I was a little bit taken aback by the number of unemployment claims that Stacey Cal is dealing with, and that increase in her workload and Ms. Dassau's workload. So that's my input.
Anybody else?
Bob, it's Karen.
Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
As far as Anna's department is concerned, Biz has been gone since last year. She left either in March or April of 2019. So
Right.
that position has not been filled until this past March 31st.
Right.
Jill Dorr was the other person in that department, and she went to be the clerk at the fire station. I am not asking for that position not to be filled, but I think asking for it not to be filled for 6 months is not a lot. I don't want her to lose that position. I work with those people as being the chair of both the Millerfield and the SBAC. And I know how hard they work. And when it's time for me to submit invoices, they're back and forth with me, frequently. So I do know what's going on. As far as the planner is concerned, here we go again. $95,000 from the assistant town clerk, assistant town manager position. I'm sorry, Carla. The assistant town manager position. We don't need a planner right now. As Jim said, we don't have any money to plan anything. So we can take that $95,000 and use it in the budget on other things. I don't think there's still going to be some money there. It's not like we're stripping it. There's still $15,000 there. And I believe that Austin said that $20,000 from the, the conservation was going to go into that budget too. So that budget is not being stripped completely. And also Tangi will be part of that department. So there still is some money there for some planning to be done. Jim and I both attended the school subcommittee budget meeting today at 4:00. And I think you know how I feel sometimes about the school, but they've got some real issues. Their opening of the schools in September is going to be unreal. Nothing like we ever thought we would see. And I think we have to look at the schools. I believe that the schools, as much as I hate to say it, Barbara, I think the schools are going to need some more money. And I don't know where it's going to come from. Maybe the stabilization fund. We took $750,000 out of there to help the town. Why can't we take a few dollars out of there to help the school? She was talking today, maybe $200,000. She could not have to lay off anybody. It's an issue. The whole thing is an issue. And I think we have to look at this whole picture, and it's going to be hard.
Just to follow up on Karen with the schools, I do think that, Austin made an impassioned plea last night, which I think he did a good job with, saying that he wants to do everything he can to try to avoid layoffs. And I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I think we pretty much all agree with that. However, we are one town. And so basically what I got from that is it's okay if the town doesn't have any layoffs, but it doesn't matter if the school has, double-digit layoffs. Now, we all know, and we've been here for a long time, a lot of us, and, the school budget is always, that crazy number that is real in some respects, is not real, it's bottom line. We don't have a lot of control over it, but, to say, and I don't think they were making up the numbers, that 1.5 was level service. Now, can I say, hey, there's probably 200,000 or 300,000 in there that I would change? Yeah, probably. But still, even if it's 1.1 and they're getting 800, that's 300,000. 80% of their budget or more is employees, is personnel. And, I'm not ready to sacrifice making some tough decisions to make sure that they don't have, or they have as few layoffs as humanly possible, because we are one town and we should be protecting the whole town, not just the town side.
I agree.
If I could for a minute, Bob, I have to concur with Jim on that. 750 to the town side. I think we should appease or try to help out the school side. It's raining, it's pouring, and that's what we have that money for. I don't like to dip into savings, but in this case, as Austin said, we want to save jobs the best we can. We've come so
Guess
far
what?
with
They're all agreeing that we should dip into the stabilization fund to help the schools. What do you think, Alvin?
Yeah. So I agree with that. On the planner, I tend to agree that that we do need a planner, and it's been a long time coming. I think this is going to be a short-term crisis. I think we're going to come out of it. I think January is a good estimate for a time that we're going to be almost back to normal. They're talking about vaccines and stuff that are going to be available by 2021. So I'm hoping that's the case. So I would go along with that recommendation to keep that in there and not change that. I think we've lost out on so much money over the last few years. It hasn't been a priority to go after grants, and where we have such little revenue to do capital improvements and programs that we could benefit from. I think that's important. As far as Anna's assistant, I realize we don't have the money, but I have to agree with Tracy that she's done a great job, and I think she needs some help. And I know that Rob is the new kid on the block, but he's going to need some time to adjust, and he's got to do his job and not an assistant's job or a support staff job. So I know I'm not adding anything to cut. I'm just I want to tend to believe that Austin and Anna have been very conservative with their figures, and that we really don't have a lot of time to come up with much more, and we have to go what they kind of said. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I had a phone call I had to deal with, so I missed part of the discussion on the school. My view is that the school has been treated fairly in the original budget. It hasn't been adjusted downward on the revised budget. They're getting $800,000, which is a significant portion of our new revenue. And I would not be necessarily in favor of putting more money to the school budget. I think on the issue, we've had several departments that asked us about adding additional staff or increasing salaries. Stacy wanted to increase the benefit manager's salary. I think we're all in agreement that given the COVID situation, the possibility of that coming back, the nursing, health department needed additional staff, and I think that's being taken care of through the CARES Act, I believe. I think the inspectional services are going to need some additional money initially while everything is opening up. They're probably going to be doing a lot of additional inspections, and these people are all part-time. Should not be an expensive thing, but that's probably something we should also consider. So I don't, betwixt and between on this. I think we got a lot of information last night. I'm trying to digest it still, I think. And I'm not a huge fan in taking money out of stabilization. Although, as I said last night, we're not going to do it now. When are we going to do it? Question is, do we want to take more than the 750? And I'm not sure we want to take more than 750. It's just a few thoughts I have.
Hey, Bob, this is Bill. I apologize. My camera's not working, but I do have a couple thoughts I wanted to add. So I don't know the nuts and bolts of the school department budget, like probably Karen and Jim do, but just from 10,000 feet up, the police department is open. The DPW department, I see out working every day. The school, not their fault, but they're not working. I know they're supposedly doing that stuff from home, but the doors aren't open, and it's not their fault, but they're not open. And that's just the way it is. So, you know, I think they come every year and they ask for a lot of money, and we all feel like we need to give it to them there. In our school, it's an important part of our town. But I feel like this might be the time to kind of, if I don't know how much control we have with them, but you know, these are tough times. You're not open. You're not providing the service that you're that you're supposed to provide. So this might be the time I would kind of say tough. And so as far as taking additional money out of the stabilization fund for them, I wouldn't tend to be against that. My other comment I had was, I think that Anna came in with Austin. That's a question for the group. They kind of have some history together and have worked together. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is
Yeah.
true.
So,
It is
so the reason I bring that up is I think Anna is doing a great job, and I really think she does an excellent job. I think we all kind of have a suspicion that Austin has not, you know, maybe has some other things he's going to look to do in the near future or in the future. And my comment was maybe somebody should let Anna know how we feel about the work she's doing, and let her know that, you know, she's, you know, we would like to have her stay regardless of whether or not she continues on with Austin. Because I agree that I think she's doing an excellent job. And that was my 2 cents.
Well, I guess we could show her that by not unfunding the
Right.
position in 6 months. Also, by the way, you were right, Karen, that woman, Biz,
Yep.
who was I think the senior accountant or something, she left about a year ago. So Anna has been filling that slot until she hired Robbie, who's, you know, in the learning curve. And right now, the accounts payable person, that role is either being filled not so much by Anna, but by other people, which is stretching the department. So I think that not filling the position now, which is ideally what she would want, just like the planner position, but unfunding it for 6 months is one thing. Unfunding it for a year's, you know, another, and I'm not in favor of that personally. I happen to agree that a planner is a new position. It doesn't exist, and we don't fund it. I think that's not a bad thing, and that's what another $47,000 that could be used elsewhere.
Bob, if I may?
Sure, Jen.
Yeah, so lots of thoughts and really appreciate everybody's comments. I wish I was as optimistic about the economy as Jim is. As I look at some of the statistics that have come out recently, there was just a survey in the Globe yesterday that talked about people's willingness to go out to restaurants. More than half of people said it was going to be another 6 months before they would be willing to go out to a restaurant. So I do think conservatism is in mind. And I know we've seen a lot of what's been going on in the Main Street economy, but just in the past week, IBM, Cisco, Citrix, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprises have laid off people. We're seeing law firms lay off people. We're seeing all sorts of professional firms lay off people. We are not done with the layoffs yet, and they're starting to hit white collar significantly. And for those that are not laying off, there's a significant lack of investment that is happening. So it's going to result in quite a bit of reduced business. We're looking at an economy that's contracting by 40% this quarter, and it's going to take a while to pick up. So I wish I could share that optimism. And I also wish I could share the optimism about a vaccine available in the next year. The fastest a vaccine has ever been developed is in 5 years. And what they're talking about right now, and I work in the pharmaceutical industry quite a bit, is a brand new technology that's never been tested before. And all they're talking about is that potentially within a year to 18 months time, we may have sufficient dosages to be able to give to first responders, not to the general population. You know, there was an article in the Washington Post today that said this virus, we have to prepare to be with us pretty much forever. The only virus that has ever been eliminated in human history is smallpox, and that took 200 years. So I think conservatism, as much as I'm not a conservative by any means, conservative planning and thinking really should guide us. And if things are better, we can address it then. And I agree that, Anna and Austin have done yeoman's work to try to maneuver this budget, from the beginning. I completely agree that we should not bring a planner on right now. I think we should take the rest of that money and we should sprinkle it amongst those key places that really are, bearing the brunt of this, like, Stacy's person that's dealing with benefits and things and unemployment and all of that. I'm very happy we've got another alternative for bringing somebody else into the public health department. That will be absolutely beneficial. In terms of the code enforcers, what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is they also believe that that can be dealt with via some of the CARES Act money as well, but they didn't think they needed to fund that right now. So I think we're okay there. And then when we think about the AP clerk, the AP clerk is not the senior accountant or the CFO. The AP clerk is somebody that is making sure that invoices that are being paid timely. And we all know some of the issues we've had before with invoices not being processed and holdovers from year to year. I think it's very generous that she's willing to say, let's hold off on that until January before we fund that. I think they've given us a very well thought out, conservative. She said it was pessimistic. I think we need to be pessimistic. I think to fulfill our fiduciary duty, we need to be pessimistic right now. We can always fund something else later if things turn out to be wrong. But most of us remember the 9C cuts of 2010 and the pain that caused. So I'm supportive of the way things have been put forth right now, with the exception of the planner. And I'll withhold comments on the schools because I really don't know that much about the situation they're facing, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that they did get a big share, a huge share, a bigger share than I think they typically get of whatever new revenue was there. And they did not bear any of these additional cuts. And yes, we are one community. So we need to, take that in mind, but I will reserve judgment on the schools because I just don't know the specifics of it. So that's my 2 cents.
To get back to the schools again, Lisa every day talking to the Commissioner of Education and whomever else she has to talk to, rules and regs are changing on a daily basis. They're talking now that there probably will be just remote education in September, or it could be alternate days education. The kids will go to school X amount of days and these other kids will go to school the X other days. All of you, I'm sure, that have been on this committee for a number of years know how I feel about the school department. I would never, ever fight for them not to lose help like I will this year. If it only takes $200,000 out of the stabilization fund to have Lisa not have to send out pink slips on the 15th of June, I am for that 100%. We have teachers in the system who are older. And by older, I mean 50 and above. And some of them might not want to come back to school in September. And Lisa is also looking at this. It's a tough situation. And as Bill said, we can't see what they're doing. My grandson is a sophomore in high school. He is here every day, 9 to 12, with his classes. Come September, I think it's September 4th, school is supposed to start. I am not 100% sure. I think it's it's the week before Labor Day. These kids might not even be back in the school. She's talking about, today they were talking, she had a meeting this morning. They're talking about head covering, foot covering, masks. you know, we have to look at all these things, which she is looking at. She might have to put in extra teachers. She's got a very large sped population. And we need to look at all of this.
I agree that she's facing, the school system in Winthrop and the rest of the state, perhaps the rest of the country is facing unusual circumstances. If it got to the point, though, during the school year where the budgeted figures, let's assume we went with the recommended budget for the moment, was insufficient, could not the council go into the stabilization account and generate more revenue for that and transfer it to the school department?
They could do that. The issue with that would be once pink slips go out on June 14th, and then once July 1st hits, all the teachers that were laid off, even if money came back in September, October, November, they'd all be eligible for unemployment, which would really croak the town. Other than Karen's comment about the older population over 50, which hurt me a lot, Karen.
I'm sorry.
You know, I think Karen's right on. And, you know, I can't speak for every single employee of the school department, but I think they have been working extremely hard. Other people who are working remotely and still doing their regular job, they're working remotely, but they're doing the same thing. Teachers and everybody else in the school department, they're basically teaching totally different. They're making, and I don't want to make it sound like a bad thing, making things up on the fly, but they're literally going week to week, trying to do everything they can to change the way they've done things for forever. So I think for them, it's a whole new position. And I think it's been frustrating for some. I think it's been a learning experience for all. And I think the kids have gotten a lot out of it. I'd be the first to say it's not anything close to what it would be one-on-one in a classroom. And I think the teachers would agree too, that they'd much rather be in a classroom teaching. But, you know, this is just something that we've never dealt with and they've never dealt with. And I think they've done an admirable job. But, and everybody's talking, so I'm not sure who said what, but as much as I would like to find a way to give the schools more money, and I think I would make a motion to do that some way, shape, or form here or at the council level, I'm still not in favor of taking another 200,000 out of stabilization because, you know, that was a 31% hit to that account anyway, and I think Anna said 15 or 16 overall, which is significant. And, you know, if we're talking about a planner, and that in turn would talk about, if you're talking about a planner, then you're talking about development. If you're talking about development, then you're talking about bonding money. And if you're talking about bonding money, and you just took 31% of your well, at least 16% of your reserves out, that doesn't help you in a bond rating. We were able to save upwards of $12 million in interest charges on the cost of the high school. So if you're thinking a planner is a good idea, that means that you're for spending money, basically, because they're going to help us get money, so it would cost us something less, but it would still cost us money, which would require bonding, which would behoove us to have as good reserves as we possibly can. I do think we could take reserves out if I was wrong, and we, you know, boosted the excise tax, not boosted it, had it as at a lesser loss. I 100% agree with Jan, and I said that on the meals, not in the meals, on the rooms. The other thing that I did discuss last night that I didn't get a great answer, I don't think, from Austin or Anna, was we have for the last 4 or 5 years run a free cash of 1.7 million or higher, which after that, you know, if it was 1 year or even 2, you'd say, well, it could be an anomaly or whatever. That's a pretty regular thing, which means that and I do think they're being conservative, and I am conservative and think that it's a good idea, but and fluff is the wrong word, but they know that there are overages in certain accounts. And they use those overages to help us with snow and ice or whatever might happen towards the end of the year. So I'm not saying they're doing it to like put a piggy bank away. They're doing it prudently, I think. But if that's the case, that means this budget that was presented to us a week ago probably less, and I'll grant that, but close to $1 million. So now we're taking away that $1 million. We're saying that never existed. And we're taking another $750,000 from reserves. But I do think there are things like usually I would say at least all the time, hey, we can cut money out of benefits because that's easy. You know, we know there's a buffer there, but we don't know what might happen. And, you know, to Jan's comment, there could be a lot of people that are losing their jobs that then the teachers maybe that aren't losing their jobs, they're going to take the insurance over to there. And that could be an impact on that. So I really wouldn't want to touch that line. I do think that's a number from, because we did ask that question, Karen and I, when we were at the subcommittee meeting today, and they said that they think Anna has the numbers, but they think it's a pretty high percentage of their employees that do take full benefits. And I think that would be good for us to know what that percentage is. If it was 100%, then we would have nothing to worry about. I know it's not 100, but I'd like to get a better idea of what kind of potential impact that could be. But there's definitely, you know, unemployment hasn't been raised, and that probably should be because that number's more than likely going to go up. You know, fringe benefits I'd be less likely to touch, but you know, I do think it would be the right thing to do to try to take a look at the schools to see what we could do.
You know, we've all been talking and making the comments about the uncertainty of what's going on, what's going to happen, and so forth. Did the council ever consider, and is it too late to consider, the 1/12 budget that the states allowed? Because that would put all of this questioning and uncertainty behind us if we knew what the state aid was going to be at a minimum. And I just don't know why that, I don't know if it's been considered or it hasn't been considered, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. We wouldn't be having this conversation, frankly. So I don't know, I ask the council, is this anything that's been brought up?
If it's been considered, it's been considered individually. It's nothing that's been brought up at a meeting. And the other question I did ask today at the school committee was, is that, first of all, would it be, I would assume it would, but would it include the schools? Because if it did, that's and Lisa did say she had talked to superintendents on the call, and they're obviously all against it because I don't know how it would affect the schools. If they only have a budget for July, then they technically would still have to lay off all people. So I don't know if it does affect the schools. I'm assuming it would be 1/12 for every department. So yeah, I think that would be a big issue to think about before the 1/12. But I think going back to what Bob said a few minutes ago, if we're not as conservative as we should be in hindsight, then we would have to go back and take money out of reserves. And if we were more conservative than in hindsight we could have been, then I guess that's a good thing. But I think if you pass the budget, the only thing that's going to change is it's going to get worse. I mean, the only thing you're waiting for is to get a worse number than if you think the number might be a little higher, I don't think you'd worry about doing a full year budget. I think if the number's lower, that's when you would have a concern. And if the number's lower, it's something that we're going to have to deal with that's going to be terrible.
So I recall earlier in our discussions that after one of the school unions came to terms with the school department, that Anna said the school would need $1.2+ million to meet the obligations under their payroll for union and regular increases and stuff and so on. So even if the school got $1 million, theoretically, they're not going to have enough money to keep their entire staff on right now, as I understand it.
I think that would be a good argument, but I think the fact that the SBAC was able to give significant money to the schools for next year for their technology needs, I think they're able to reduce that number. And I think where the SBAC gave money for transportation, I think they're going to be able to reduce that number. So I do agree that Anna did say that, and I believe that it's about, I think it's like 1.17, but close to 1.2 million to fulfill that obligation. But I do think the overall number has gone down, not substantially, but by 200,000 or 300,000 because of some of the stuff that the SBAC was able to buy for the schools that they won't have to buy out of their operating budget.
Okay.
A couple of points, Bob. I believe Anna said last night that it looks as if the state is going to do a 1/12 budget for July.
For July.
Mm-hmm.
But she also said to us previously that 1/12 was a bit of a misnomer because there are things that are front end loaded that would have to be included in that budget for July.
Mhm.
So, I don't know what the implications for that would be for contractual obligations, like teachers or anything of that nature. I mean, that may be a question that needs to be asked. But I agree with Jim that if it gets better, we're not going to do anything about it right away. If it's worse, then there'll just be additional cuts that need to be made. So given the fact that the town council does have the flexibility to take additional cuts as we move forward, I think it probably gives a sense of certainty to the degree that we can to town employees, to the department heads, to move forward with their annual plans if we have a whole year budget in place. My concern would be that if we only did a partial budget, that would just kind of put everybody on hold.
Right.
And I'm not sure that's the right way for them to manage their departments. I'd rather see them have a full year budget that they can work with, that they don't have to worry about dividing up into 12ths. And then if we need to cut more down the road, we do that based upon those facts then.
Which is what Austin said the other night too. He said he may be coming back in September for something
Right,
else.
exactly.
I guess my only concern is I don't want to see the school department on the 15th of June send out pink slips that can be avoided. As Jim said, once the pink slips go out, if they're not rehired by June 30th, then we have to pay their unemployment for the month of July. If we should be able to reinstate them in August. That I am looking at that. I'm just looking for nobody to get laid off. Lisa did say today that non-contractual people, and she mentioned, I believe, cafeteria workers, Jim, if I'm right, they do not fall into that category.
Mm-hmm. Correct, I think.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask too is, does anybody know what the outcome last night of the rules and ordinance and the licensing commission for the outside dining came out? I mean, are they going to increase outside dining or anything? Does anybody know that?
I do not know that. I think who are the only people that have outside dining now? La Siesta, I think Go-Go Naki has outdoor dining. I don't know if the Arms technically has the patio for outdoor dining, but I'm not sure. I know they had there was discussion at the council meeting a little bit about, the Hackman Road idea and all that stuff, but I have not heard one thing about last night's meeting.
I haven't heard anything either.
I did.
Oh, cool, Carla, go.
They mentioned it on the call today. Denise said that they spoke at length and they were going to be bringing several amendments to the full council, I think on Tuesday or in your agenda Thursday. But that's all she said. But she did say it was a healthy and lengthy meeting with good discussion, and they expected to take it up Tuesday.
Because I think they had hoped to move some of the center center restaurants to be able to expand a little bit so that they could, still, and Jim, I don't want them to close Woodside Ave because that's you, but,
If they close it at night, that's fine with me. I don't understand. I mean, I'm sure, and I hope they, you want to try to make things as healthy as possible for everybody concerned. I do know that, and I'm sure it's not going to be at that time, but I think there was in the email that went out maybe this past week on the Center District thing, I don't know if the next phase, the whole phase is going to be done overnight or at night, because I think it has impacts on the center itself, the actual crossroads, French Square. And I think that would basically close the whole center. So that's what I thought I read, that a lot of the work going on in the next phase is going to be done overnight. I don't know. I don't imagine it's 9 o'clock at night, but I don't know.
I think it's 8 o'clock, Jim. I think
Oh,
they
really?
said 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
I read the announcement today. It looked like it was on from Somerset to Woodside. So it's
Yeah,
just
but I
that
think it's
stretch.
the whole, I think it's the center. It's that you will not be able to get through the center, I think is the point of doing it overnight. or at night. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's something that we should take a look at. But it's not just the center. I mean, you know, you have businesses like Rossetti's and departments and all the businesses up the Highlands too that are affected by this, that
Exactly.
hopefully whatever they're talking about has a positive impact for all those people.
Right.
Hey, Karen, this is Brent. With your concern about the pink slips on June 14th, being that's like 17 days away, have they approached, and I don't know the process and I don't know enough about the schools, obviously, but they figured out what their hole may be and what their ask may be to make sure that doesn't, it just seems a little odd to me that that's so close, but yet there isn't a defined plan in relation to their potential ask.
I don't think that Lisa really defined that today, Jim, do you?
What, I'm sorry, Brent, what did you say in that it's so close?
No, I mean, it's 17 days away.
Yeah.
So
I think this has been something they've talked about for a long time. They're in a, I guess like everybody else though, they're in a position that they don't know what they're getting. I think if she absolutely knew, I think if, and I can't speak for Lisa, but I think if the superintendent absolutely knew that she was getting 800,000 and that was absolutely it, I think she'd be getting ready to send out pink slips on June 14th. I think she's trying her best to, you know, the deficit, I don't know, the gap, I guess is a better word, is roughly 701,000 from what was presented as level service. I do think that number has been decreased, my own thoughts, because of some of the stuff that was done by the SBAC, buying a lot of technology, helping out with transportation. I think there potentially is some COVID money that can't really be technically used to run a budget, but I think it would help stuff that's in the budget maybe, that might be able to help that number. So I think if you can get that number down to 1 million, you know, which was 200,000 more from us, I think that conversation of June 14th layoffs would be over. So I think that's what's causing the concern is they don't know. And technically we're not voting on the budget. You know, I'm hoping that we're not voting on the budget till June 15th. Like we would have to technically vote on a budget by, you know, 15 days prior to July 1st, which would be June 15th, which is a Monday. Our second scheduled meeting in June is scheduled for June 16th.
Right.
I am going to make a motion at the next council meeting to try to have a special meeting and move, you know, to break the council rules, and instead of having it on the third Tuesday, have it on the third Monday. So then we would have another 2 weeks, maybe to get some more information from the state, maybe to get some more things clarified, give us as a finance commission more time if we want to digest some stuff. And hopefully we'd be able to vote on it the 15th. If not, if we're going to vote in the budget, we have to vote in it on June 2nd, next Tuesday, which I don't think, you know, I know Tracy's put in a ton of time with us here and Rich has put in a ton of time. And, you know, I know other councilors have tried to make it when they can, but I don't think they have the in-depth knowledge. To the best of my knowledge, other than me, Rich, and Tracy, and I'm assuming Phil, I don't even know if they know about the new budget, you know, other than an email.
Yeah,
so
I'm not close enough to the timing or the schools, and I'm saying I'm ignorant, and I'm not trying to.
Oh, no, I understand.
It seemed like if I were her, you know, I would assume best case, you're getting 800 grand. And then you got to think of a worst case plan and something in between.
I think the 800 hopefully is worst case because that's what's still being offered. I think, you know, but she has to go to that thing. Do you put out pink slips even though you're hoping that you get to take them back in a week? You know, she still has to know, even if somebody says, hey, we're going to give you $1 million on the 15th, she doesn't know that for sure. Any councilor can make a motion and not pass it or whatever. And now she has to have slips out by the 14th. So she's in a, you know, kind of a tough position. I think it's, you know, demoralizing too for families and everybody else. Even if you think you might get rehired back in a couple of weeks, there's still that sense of getting a pink slip that is going to be gut-wrenching really, especially in this time. So I think it's, you know, it's emotionally a tough item and just fiscally it's a tough thing for her to do.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if she has floated any additional plans outside of what she's come up with already, meaning I didn't know if it has been made known that there's option A, B, or C in relation to what she's thinking. That's all I'm getting.
No, you're right. And I think they have is it Monday night, Karen? They have their school committee meeting?
Yes, they do.
And to Brent's point, I'm hoping that they make it absolutely clear, crystal clear, the people in the town, everybody else, what they're actually up against, and us too, to see if they've made some potential decisions on what might have to be done.
Okay, that's fine. That was my only question.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments you'd like to share? Okay, all right. I guess the question is now, if we have to go on the presumption that the council is going to vote on the budget on Tuesday, and we have to get a recommendation in before then. So we have got to come up with what our recommendation is, working off of the budget we got last night, the amended budget, and any amendments we feel we want to make. So, I mean, I would spend a lot of time today looking at this thing, and I'm so blurred, my numbers are just bouncing around. I'm not even sure what the budget is anymore, because the budget, the information we focused on last night did not include the enterprise, the revolving accounts, or anything else. So it's just general fund budget.
And capital also, it didn't really get into.
It didn't include capital. So I think it might have been a little bit around on the funding aspect of it, but yeah, but it didn't include capital either. So I'm not even sure what the budget,
Well, the other thing to your point, Bob, is, I think you're right that we have to come to some sort of, I mean, there's only two other councilors here, even if they all agreed, that doesn't give us a definitive that we'll have that meeting. I can't imagine that people would vote down having that special meeting. It just makes all the sense in the world. And we had promised at the beginning of this, when Councilor Christopher was on, we had tried to make it abundantly clear that we would try to have a finance committee meeting prior so that councilors can get more updated information and stuff. I mean, I would plead with councilors to okay that changing of the second meeting in June to give us all more time to digest. I mean, literally, usually it's 45 days, 90 days before you're getting budgets and going through stuff. Now it's literally 2 days and you're trying to make a $60 million decision. It's difficult.
Yes, it is. Is there any way that you councilors can have discussions with your other colleagues just to get a sense of whether or not an extension or a change in your second meeting in June would be acceptable?
I do feel comfortable saying that the council president is on board with that.
Okay.
I can't speak for anybody else.
Okay.
Except myself.
How many councils are there? 9?
9.
So that's 4 out of 9 that theoretically would go along with that proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just took a look at the online version. It has not been updated for any of these changes. So we really don't have a current budget other than the memo. And I understand that because Anna said she finished it at the wire before getting it to us, to our meeting. So I get that, but it's not updated online. So we really don't have a complete, except for this spreadsheet, which is kind of hard to really be able to tell what the actual expenditures are. I think we have to think about what was there originally and what's been changed. And I think our discussion tonight kind of says what we think we might want to change. So we might be able to change our process instead of the running of the budget pages, really just focus on the things that we've talked about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Do you, Bob, do you not, would you rather not have a meeting on Friday? Is that a problem for everybody?
No, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just
okay.
I'm just thinking of it would be better to have more time if we could get it.
Right.
Not just
but I think if we had planned on having a meeting on Friday and maybe starting fresh, now that we've kind of put all our cards on the table or whatever, so to speak, maybe we could get some more clarity on the fact that we will be having a meeting on the 14th or the 15th instead of the 16th, which could make our meeting on Friday very short if we even have to have it. And, give us a couple of weeks or at least a good solid week to get more, to
Right.
come up with a really good, synopsis, which I'm sure you will regardless of how much time you have.
Let me ask everybody while we're all here. We booked a meeting for Friday because we couldn't book Thursday because we didn't have the 2 days notice time to do that. So, and also I think we booked a meeting for Monday as well. Can everybody be available Friday? I know it's a Friday night, although under these circumstances, it's not a whole lot different than a Tuesday night, but is everybody able to make Friday for a while? We'll make it as short as we can, but
I'm fine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
is there anybody that can't make it or doesn't think they can make it? All right, okay, that's good. Thanks for bringing that up, Jim, because that slipped my mind. Then I guess, why don't we talk a bit about what changes, if any, we might want to make to the general fund budget that we went over last night with Austin and Anna, relative to any increases, decreases, adds or deletes or whatever, and see if we can get through that for a while tonight.
I think it would be good to make a list maybe of items that are even up for debate. I guess,
Okay.
like the planner seems to be this, I think Rich and Tracy seem to be for, there's definitely discussion to be had on the planner. I think that's something that would be discussed. I think the accounts payable clerk, I think there's, not 100% consensus. I think that should be discussed. The schools, I guess, the only thing with the schools would be an increase. It wouldn't be, taken from something. I think the revenue, the projected revenues should be discussed, if nothing else, from the state and local. But I think it's prudent to discuss the code enforcement. I guess we don't have, as much as I think we all agree that Meredith definitely needs some help. My understanding is that seems to be taken care of. I hope that we feel comfortable with that. But I think the code enforcement officer is something that can be discussed. Maybe it would be a 5-second conversation, but I think deserves to be discussed. And I think if people have certain items, I don't think we're going to be going over like the old days about, like Jen, I think, said about line by line. I think, but if we could make a list of 15 or 20 items, somebody had mentioned the Veterans Office. I mean, that could be discussed. There are certain things that people have a passion about, I think. So if we can make a list of whatever it is, 10 or 15 items, and then focus on those.
Well, if Barbara's grabbing what you're saying, we've got it.
Yeah.
I like Jim's idea. Would there be a way to send around a spreadsheet, like Jim said, with that list? And maybe we could kind of put our comments in there? Would that be possible?
I
Bob?
don't think we need to be that sophisticated about it. I think we can just have a general conversation tonight.
Would it take like a roll call?
No, just
I
general
think-
conversation. We can take votes on it. Yeah, anything that's going to affect the budget financially, we'd have to vote on.
But I think it's important to realize, like, let's say, I don't know, and this is not a motion or anything like that, but let's say I said, oh, we should give the schools 100,000 more. I should also have a plan as to where that 100,000 is going to come from.
Right.
And I would say, we're going to give the schools 200,000. I think we should up excise taxes 75. I think we should eliminate the planner for 50, whatever. I mean, I think it should be noted that if you have a plus or minus, a debit or a credit, there has to be another debit or credit to even it out.
You have to balance it to the budget.
There you go, Barbara.
Unless you're taking it out of stabilization.
Right.
That's right. Well, still, you have to say, if you want to add, 200,000 to the school and just say, hey, I want to keep the budget the same. I just want to take another 200 out of stabilization. It's still a debit and a credit, basically. I mean, you still need a plus and minus.
Does it have to be 200? Could it be less?
No. It could be. It doesn't have to be. You could give. You could say, 200 to the schools, I want to break it up in this way. I want to, again, like I said, I feel the excise revenues is too conservative. We should add another 50,000. I think the planner is a 50,000 there, and just say 100,000 from stabilization, just to make it easy. I mean, you could split it up. It just has to equal the original.
Jim, maybe you can answer this or someone else. What's the breaking point where you say a stabilization, affects our bond rating and stuff? Is there a plateau where you have to be to have so much in
I think in any
reserve revenue?
normal situation, I think in any normal situation, taking 750,000 out of stabilization to fund an operating budget would be a very bad thing to do. I think we're not in normal times. I think, we had some of these discussions as a council not too long ago on the decision we had to make as to how to fund an item, whether to borrow or take money out of stabilization. And I think, we felt that the bonding, the advice we had received was basically saying they could not give us a determination. So we erred on the side of caution and did what I think.
But a month later, they're asking us. But a month later, they're asking us to take 750.
Right. So yeah, I don't think it's good in a perfect situation but again, like Bob will say or Anna said, what's the money for? It's rainy day, it's pouring out. So it kind of makes sense, but that money is so valuable sitting there. And that proved to be the case in building the new school. If we had no potential projects on the horizon and we weren't going to bond any money, I'd have no problems taking 750,000 out. But we have already zeroed out, I think, and somebody could correct me, but with the MWRA, I believe we're not eligible for any more loans until 2028, which means if there's a major infrastructure problem that we have to fix, where's that money going to come from? So, it's always better to have, I mean, I think everybody would agree, it's always better to have more.
Yeah, but what I heard from Anna last night and what I've seen previously is that, if we're only dipping in 31% of a general stabilization fund, that's not going to kill us, and that there's lots of communities that are doing a lot more, dipping a lot more into their stabilization fund, and that, there is a recognition that these are unprecedented times, and that is what that money is for. So I think we should be conservative in how much we take from it, but I don't think we should be afraid to use it to maintain the services that are essential for the community.
I think you're right, but also remember in the capital budget, there was also other money being taken out of stabilization accounts for other things, correct?
But those were capital stabilization funds.
No, but it's still reducing your capital.
But keep in mind though.
Sure, and that was overall, it was a 15% reduction. It was a 31%.
I think the 15% though was just for this.
No, I'm looking at, I don't think so. Hang on one second. Let me just.
Because she said it was a 31% deduction in the stabilization fund, but only 15%.
No, she says, the proposed transfer from the general stabilization fund is a 31% reduction of the current balance of the fund. The proposed transfer overall is a 15% reduction to our overall undesignated fund balance, our total reserves. So it's 15%.
Undesignated, so you're thinking anything that's in the budget is designated.
The total reserves, that's the undesignated fund balance. That's like your retained earnings as a business. So
right, no, I understand that.
However it's been appropriated, be it to building maintenance, be it to capital, be it to general.
Correct, but the amount in the budget has not been appropriated yet. So I think those transfers would also make that 15% closer to 18 or whatever it is.
Okay, you could be right.
But regardless, right. I mean,
yeah.
I think, it's something to think about there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not entirely clear from
the word. It's vague.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Mike wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, to take it one step further from what Jan was saying, based on the money's there, and that's what it's there for, but council policy for the last few years have been very aggressive to replacing the money. So we're gonna use it this year. It's unprecedented. But I'm somewhat confident that give 3-4 years, a good chunk of it's gonna be back. And we can bond whatever we need to bond. But that's what it's there for.
Yeah.
That's what it's there for.
There is a
It is there,
formula.
and it's
Yeah.
usually made up with free cash, which if we're taking them at their word, there's not going to be any free cash because they're assuming, they're hoping that, or I guess they're
Yeah,
not
this
hoping,
year.
but right, this year, and we'll see what happens over the next couple of years. But I think if this was passed the way it was, I would probably make a council motion because, like Mike says, that they're replaced. They're not really replaced any more aggressive than any other year because there's a specific motion that 35% of the free cash goes into general stabilization, X amount goes into there. And again, there's probably, like Richard said, there might not be any, or I said, there might not be any this year. There might be more in following years, but I would want to increase that percentage so we can recoup it faster. But there are specific line items to say how much go in.
It's better than the $25,000 a year, $30,000 a year they were putting in years ago.
Oh, absolutely. If
And
there were
just
years
keep-
that they put in nothing, correct?
Yeah, and keep in mind too, we're talking about the schools. I think some of this money is reimbursable from the COVID funds because they're going to need money to set buildings up to open up if they can open up. But I know at least twice since I've been around, we've hit the stabilization fund for some serious money for the schools. So, I mean, it's been done before.
And I do think Mike's right with that there is money coming in from COVID. I think even Anna has a line for COVID reimbursement, 68 or 80 something thousand, whatever she had. And I think the schools, Lisa was upfront saying that there would be money for them to help, do whatever they have to do to the schools and everything else.
And one of the keys to that was that it were for expenses that were not budgeted. They weren't
Budgeted,
normal
foreseen.
expenses. Right,
Right.
and that's why it made sense to not put the additional worker in the health department on the budget because you had a better chance of it getting paid
Yeah.
if it were off budget. And it was the same for the extra in sectional department monies and services.
The other thing Lisa talked about today too was extra nurses for the schools. This might be another issue. I mean, she has one nurse for each school, which is great, but you might need 1.5 nurses. You don't know about that yet. And I want to get back to that grants position again. Everybody keeps saying 50,000. I understood it was 95,000 into that grants budget, which was the assistant town manager's salary. The rest of it was monies that was already there. The 15,000 that was there, the 20,000 from conservation and Tangies. So I don't know, do we have 95,000 or do we have 50,000?
I think we have 47,500 because in Anna's presentation last night, one of their cuts was to postpone that hire until January 1st.
Right.
The discussion we were having was whether to do that, what they said, or recommend that they don't fill it until July 1st and save. And it is 47,500 plus it's also, potentially 10,000 in benefits.
Yep.
That's half a year. Let's say it's half a year.
And that could go into a couple of the things. One that Tracy talked about for the veterans agent and for human resources. And I don't know what Carla's going to need. Carla's not saying much, but you know what? She sent me an article last week from Plymouth that they had a primary down there, and I don't know the date. I honestly can't remember the date, but the primary was so bad and so difficult that the town manager, who had been the town manager there for 28 years, Carla, if I'm right, resigned the next day. That's how bad it was. And so that's another thing we have to think about.
I'm only being quiet because I don't have good news and I don't have firm documentation about what we're going to need. So that's kind of all in flux. all my colleagues across the state are hammering the state to give us the guidance. But, you know, what do we already know? We know that voting is either going to be predominantly by mail, whether it's all mail or mostly by mail, because people don't want to come in. And then we know that we have extended early voting in August, and also we'll have it in the last weeks of October leading into November. So there's a cost there, but also I feel like we're definitely going to have some type of in-person voting on election day, traditional voting like we always have, except we're going to need to outfit our precincts, you know, with the, what's the proper terminology, but with the guards, the plexiglass, or
Right.
some type of thing like that. And we may have to sweeten the deal to get folks, you know, to work. So there's going to be increased costs, whether it's DPW or private. We're going to need to build out some, you know, I don't think it's a huge cost, but it is going to build, you know, it's going to build.
Yep.
You know, a 10% cut to the supplies, everybody's taking it. It doesn't mean anything, but I'm going to end up coming back for more than that anyway. You know what I mean? And other departments may too. I don't know. I just, you know, that's all I know on my end. And maybe that's all going to be covered by the CARES Act. I don't know. Is it going to be our cost in the front and then we get reimbursed later on in the back? Or is it going to be unfunded mandates, which also the state has rolled out?
Yes, that's the problem. We have so many unknowns. We could get federal grants coming to the state, which state in turn will pass on to the cities and towns.
You just don't know. And you don't know if they're going to give us all the money, but they're going to give it to us, you know, a year after we've spent it. Which means we'll be taking, you know, from stabilization or whatever to,
Right.
we'll have to self-fund, I guess is what I'm saying in the front.
Okay. So, trying to think, what do we want to do? We want to all think about what we've been talking about and come back Friday with very specific dollar and cents adjustments to the budget so that we can create our final recommendation.
I think that's a great idea.
Makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. And we'll work off of the town manager's revised budget. That'll be our starting point. We'll build off of that, up or down. And we'll see where we end up.
Bob, do you think we should leave out that inspectional services and the health department, or do you think that should be included? I mean, we're not 100% guaranteed on that being, you know, being funded. And I think it's important.
Well, I thought that Anna said that CARES Act was going to help with the health department and the additional personnel there.
I don't think she said it. I don't think she gave any definitive answer on the buildings and.
The building, I think, is up to us to fund.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
They
just.
said they
that's-
had a plan for that.
Yeah, isn't that a part-time person just going to a full-time position? Is that what I understood?
Well,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
think so.
part-time position now. I don't think that it needs to become full-time. I think what they need are additional hours for that person to do work or to hire other part-timers to help out. I don't think they necessarily want to convert it to a full-time job.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
So my suggestion would be that if we have specific questions, like, you know, the inspectional services, that maybe, you know, we get them by morning to Bob in an email and you can send them over to Anna, and I'm sure she'll reply to us in time for
Good
us to have
idea.
a meeting on Friday.
Yeah, any budget questions, send to me, I'll get them to her, and she's very good at responding, as we know, so let's see where we go.
And should we, and I don't mean this in any disrespect at all, and I think that she'd be really happy, but I think that's a great idea, Jan, to try to get as many questions as we can answered, maybe tomorrow in an email. I was going to reach out to see if there's any way we could have a more formatted budget that would include all the bottom lines and the capital and and enterprise funds, but also was just a quick question on panelists for Friday's meeting. I would like it to be us again, but it's up for discussion, I guess.
I think that makes sense, Tim. I mean, these are our deliberations. We've had the town government in to provide their input. I think that as a commission, we should be deliberating.
And
I
they're not
agree.
excluded really, when you think about it.
No, they're not
Sure, it's
excluded, but
public.
they could be
they can
excluded from the
dial in.
panelist.
Right. That, you know what, I think that's good. I don't know about the enterprise funds. I'm very leery about them. Mainly the rink and Parks and Rec. Don't know that Parks and Rec are either gonna have a program this summer. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna owe money on the rink. Although, didn't somebody say the rink had enough reserve funds that they could?
Yeah, the rink is very minimal. It's under 15 grand. And there's reserves there for that. The rink should be fine unless, you know, unless we have an outbreak in the fall and everything goes back
Right.
into flux.
And the
But
harbor
assuming-
master I know is doing very well. You know, the boats are going in the water. I know that.
Yeah,
I only know that because my grandson is a deputy harbor master. But the boats
mean,
are going in.
the ferry's probably a whole nother discussion, but
Oh,
who even knows
don't
where to
even.
start?
Don't even.
Yeah, well, I think anything this summer, you know, the Parks and Rec may not be able to do their programs, therefore they're not going to get the receipts. And are they going to be able to pay the help? And then the ferry, again, if they can start and then they can only take a certain number of passengers, their receipts will be cut back as well. I'm concerned about those two very much.
Yeah, Larry
My
Holmes had
question-
said 16 passengers, and that's not what Tangi said.
Hmm.
No, Tangi said 20,
My question that I was gonna, the question I was gonna send to Bob tomorrow morning was about the ferry. Obviously, everybody's doing what we're doing right now. Is Quincy gonna pull their money off the table? Are they gonna have to balance their budget? What kind of a commitment do we have? Because if they pull out, we're on the hook for a ton of dough.
Yeah, I think that was $150,000.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we definitely need the additional week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
So
try
what
to
is-
get some definitive, well, I guess it's not definitive, but we'll try to get as good a indication as we can for Friday's meeting.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Yeah.
And if, yeah.
She's
send me-
saying that the numbers from the state were pretty firm. Oh, is that just a guesstimate?
It was a guess.
Oh,
That's a
yeah,
good,
it's a total guess.
Total guess.
I assume they have some
You know,
basis for the,
correct me if I'm wrong, but way back in,
go ahead, Mike.
way back in the day, the old advisory board days, when the state didn't come up with their budgets until October,
In September, right.
didn't we pass very, like level funded budgets and come back in the fall and then hit it for real?
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically the same thing, not 1/12. I would just take level funded budget and come back in September.
That's what we did before.
Yeah,
That's a thought.
yeah. I mean, this
It
1/12
makes
thing,
sense.
yeah, this 1/12 isn't gonna work. There are certain departments that have front-loaded expenses, others are at the back end. It's a mess. I would just do this year's
Right.
budget,
Go with
bare
this
bones, and say we'll be back when we know everything else. Fund what you have to fund and then come in and that would seem the
Makes
simplest
sense.
way.
Well, I think it's a different situation. I mean, back then it was only a case of waiting for the state to fund its budget. We've got too many extenuating circumstances that we don't know what the impact will be because the state could be continuously revising their budget.
True.
And the school, if the school has to put out a notices to personnel and they're getting basically what they're getting the FY20 budget again, and we're talking about giving them 800 or $1 million or whatever the number is, they'd be getting level funded. That probably would put them in a tough position too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too.
There are no
Well, I
easy
like it. I
answers.
like it, Mike.
If we did, and I guess this could be a recommendation if so chosen, but let's say in the end, the majority says that we take 750,000 from stabilization, or whatever the number is, 500,000 from stabilization. Could we make a recommendation that, so if Anna projected, let's say, and I don't know what the numbers off the top of my head, but if Anna projected that we're getting 2.5 million from the state with their lower projections, and they come in at 3 million, could we make a recommendation that they transfer 500, but, or would you have to wait until free cash came in at the end of the year? And so this is what I get a little irked about too, because I think you would have to wait for the year to go through, have free cash certified, and then you can replace the money. So if we took 500 out and they ended up giving us 500 more than we thought, so technically we didn't have to take any money out, and then we ended up spending it on something else, that irks me too. That's why I would rather err on the side of, I don't know if it would be conservative enough, but err on the side of coming back in October, something similar to Mike said, and says, hey, you know what? We need that 500 grand from stabilization. This way I know it's being used properly.
Well,
But we still have to balance it some other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, Jim, it depends upon what you would take away in order to do that.
Right, and I think what that would be, in my situation, I would be less aggressive on the local receipts, other than the meal, the room tax. I can't argue that in any way, shape, or form to keep that at less than 25%. But I could try to argue the other two.
Well,
And
people
I
aren't
think that
buying
would be
cars.
set. I'm sorry?
People aren't buying cars.
Well, Kurt's got a lot of them to sell for low prices. Somebody will buy them.
And not only that, one of my clients works in that area. And what I learned from them is that this year is the largest number of cars coming off lease ever. So not only do you have the Hertz and Advantage Bank flooding the market,
pre-owns.
Yeah, you've got a ton of pre-owns. So
one thing I wish we could get, and I don't think we can, but I'd like to see Winthrop's numbers. I'd like to see Winthrop's unemployment numbers. You know what I mean? Because if the state's 10, but Winthrop's only at 6, well, we have a lot of healthcare workers, a lot of people that work at the airport that didn't get laid off, whatever the case may be. Are we in a better, not that we're, this white collar community, but are we in a better position than most in terms of unemployment and stuff like that? And I don't know if we can get an unemployment number for a town.
I think we can from Stacy.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Not from town employees. I mean, from the 18,000 people.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
From the state.
Yeah. No, I think from the town side, we're close to
very
90%. I would say we're not right.
it's probably a real lagging indicator that you'd be.
Oh, I'm sure. You're right. You're right. It is very hard. Unless we go door to door. Karen, can you do that tomorrow?
No, I can't. I'm going to be at the pool. Sorry. I need a day off.
I do think on a big picture that for the purposes of our budgeting, we have to rely on the projected receipts and revenue given to us by the town manager and the CFO. And we can sit here and speculate that it's too high, it's too low, it's too conservative, it's too liberal. We don't have any more or less reason than anybody else to come up with a number. They do. I'm trusting them that they have some reason for the numbers they've used. So I don't think we should start going in and adding and deleting revenue figures. So I would suggest that we base everything off of the numbers that they presented to us. I mean, I am open for discussion, but I feel very strongly about that we can't just decide, well, we'll increase our not our real estate, but our excise tax because we think more new cars are going to be sold than they do. We can't do that.
I agree with Bob.
And I don't think we've ever tried to change a revenue number before.
No, I don't think
No, we haven't. I don't
think we have, but I don't think they've reduced them by 40% on us either.
Well, that's true.
So I think it's worthy of discussion, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think
Because
it's,
if we waste all our time trying to do that, we've got to focus in on the expense portion and on how we're gonna take care of all these other things that I've got a list of Jim read off. We got about 8 things, and that's only from Jim, so. So, all right. So yeah, so why don't you, if things you would like to get, questions you'd like to get answered, send to me. I will get them up to Anna as quick as I can after I get them. And then hopefully she'll get them back to us in time for our discussion on Friday night.
Friday is my takeout night. You're spoiling it.
I'm sorry. I wish we weren't meeting on Friday. Believe me, I was hoping we'd be done tonight and we could be writing up a recommendation. And if it's not inappropriate for members of the council to informally discuss this with your counterparts to see whether or not an extension of the process till the second meeting in June would be good to have if we know that's going to happen. I know we don't know for sure, but it'd be good to get a sense of what people feel. I think everybody's sensitive to this, the timing. The only real timeline is June 15th. That's by the town charter. So if we can adjust that meeting time, that would be helpful for all of us to be able to, including the councilors, to analyze this thing. Because we'll get them our recommendation as soon as we can and give them time to look at it.
I have a question to Jim. Would that have to be on the agenda, that question?
no, we could suspend, it would just be a motion to suspend council rules to change the meeting dates for the month of June. And no, it would not be first time before us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want it to go for another 2 weeks.
But it's worth, you know what, it's a good thought and it's worth probably just putting on the agenda so we don't have
Right.
any problems.
Right.
Thanks, Barbara.
No excuses.
And in the meantime, we have to be prepared to do everything on Friday, assuming that we have to have our recommendation in for Tuesday's meeting. That's all we can do. We have to work on that basis. And we also, I think, have a meeting scheduled on the calendar for next Monday. Worst case, we're really having trouble, which would mean getting our recommendation to the council Tuesday morning. So,
Be up all night.
yeah, it'd be a late night.
Wouldn't be
So,
the
I mean,
first time.
The gold red book.
There you go.
So we do have, time is an issue, obviously, and a lot of unanswered questions. This has been a unique year, like it has been for every other thing we've done in the last 3 or 4 months.
We probably should, or maybe if you want to ask Carla, and just with timing and stuff, if things work out that it looks like we're not going to meet and we have a little bit more time, we would probably want to have a meeting next either Wednesday or Thursday scheduled. If you wait till Monday, that's, you might lose Wednesdays. So just a thought that, we could always cancel it, but should probably have at least one date for next midweek.
Are you there, Carla?
I'm here. I'm just, you're talking about next.
Wednesday.
Either Wednesday or Thursday,
Wednesday or
whatever works
Thursday.
for everybody.
Well, Wednesday, Jim, you had a tentative Miller Field, so.
Well, whatever works for everybody, we'll work
Okay,
around it.
that's fine. That's fine.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, we're all here now. How does it work?
Well,
And-
it's fine, as long as we don't do a Miller Field on Wednesday, that's fine.
How's everybody feel about Wednesday? Or would Thursday be better? Does anybody,
I'm
Wednesday's
not
fine.
traveling.
pardon me?
Wednesday, but
Not a lot of
Wednesday's
plans.
fine.
Nope.
Jan, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
I think
Jan,
Jan said not a
So I
problem.
just said I'm not traveling.
oh, okay, all right, yeah, traveling.
Calendar is empty.
All
Well, I
right,
wouldn't say that.
Wow.
all right.
So are we gonna post for Thursday then?
Well, I don't know if this Miller Field meeting is there,
No, why don't we post
That's
for Wednesday? We'll
Wednesday.
work around the Millerfield.
all right.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Barbara, can you talk to Carla tomorrow and just confirm that?
Okay.
We're both here, I know.
Wednesday.
Okay,
I don't know what date you picked on.
It's,
Wednesday.
the 3rd, Barbara,
It's the
One
3rd,
person.
June 3rd.
3rd.
June 3rd, okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Anybody have anything else before we?
Yeah, I just want everybody to listen to whatever Jan says, because many years ago, when I went on my blood pressure med, which was Cozar, it was costing me $50 for 90 days. And Jan kept saying, hold on, hold on, hold on, because it's gonna go public. And by God, in 6 months, it went public, and it went down to $5. So if she says there's not gonna be a vaccine out, I believe her.
Well, hey, we can hope for the best, but you know, there's still a lot that says it's so complex to manufacture. I mean, right
Yeah.
now, the flu vaccine is made in chicken eggs. And I've been at the facility of Sanofi Pasteur in Pennsylvania that makes them. They have their own captive chicken farm, and they bring in, I believe it's 6 million eggs a day.
Okay. I believe
And
anything
And
you
it's
say.
only 40%.
Yeah, and the whole technology they're using now is a brand new technology they've never used. It could be phenomenal, but let's put it this way: we shouldn't put our eggs in one basket. No pun
I
intended.
There
believe
you
you,
go.
I believe you.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, second.
Okay,
Exactly.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so Friday night and tomorrow, get your questions to me as soon as you can in the morning, and I'll get them out to Anna.
can we make sure
Thank
that
you.
everybody sees the questions so that we don't duplicate? You know,
Yeah, copy
everybody
all.
sends them. Yeah,
I'll send
copy
it to,
everybody.
in other words, carbon everybody on your question.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
okay, fine.
okay.
Okay.
Good
Thank
night,
you, guys.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Bye.
All right, good night.
Night.